Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Eric Isselbacher. I'm the director of the Healthcare Transformation Lab, or HTL, and I'd like to welcome all of you to the Novelline Innovation Speaker Series. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is a quarterly series of talks hosted by HTL, which are intended to bring together providers, researchers, and administrators from across the hospital to learn firsthand from industry and academic leaders in innovation. I'm very pleased this morning to introduce our speaker today, Michael Fenn. Michael is the Director of Healthcare and Life Sciences at the Harvard Innovation Labs, commonly known at Harvard as iLab. Michael received his BS in Chemistry and Biochemistry, his MS in Materials Science and Engineering, and his PhD in Biomedical Engineering, all from the University of Florida. His research background is diverse and includes biomaterials, nanomaterials, tissue engineering, spectroscopy, 3D bioprinting, and machine learning. That goes on to two hands, with applications in medical devices, diagnostics, and drug delivery. Until recently, Michael was an NIH-funded professor of biomedical engineering and the director of the Center for Medical Materials and Biophotonics at the Florida Institute of Technology. Last fall, he was recruited by the Harvard iLab leadership to take on the role of Director of Healthcare and Life Sciences for the iLab. In this role, he's tasked with advising and supporting all healthcare and life science ventures. Michael also serves as the liaison within the Harvard-affiliated healthcare and research communities, as well as the surrounding Boston area innovation ecosystem. He's particularly passionate about bridging the gap between the academic and research venture worlds, having worked extensively in both. Michael has served as co-founder, advisor, and board member for over 25 startups, as well as several incubators. So we're very pleased to have Michael join us this morning to discuss how innovators at MGH might be able to collaborate with teams at the Harvard iLab to help transform healthcare. So please join me in welcoming Michael Fenn.
Thank you. Thank you for that great introduction. I really appreciate that, Eric. And I want to thank also the Healthcare Transformation. Can you guys hear me out here? If I walk around? Okay, great. And I want to thank the Healthcare Transformation Lab as well for having me. This is great. I appreciate being able to come here to Mass General. It's my first time actually here at the hospital, so I really appreciate being able to come and visit. And as the new director at Harvard Innovation Labs, I'm going to talk a little bit about what Harvard Innovation Labs is for those of you that may not know what it is or may have heard of it but don't really understand it. Talk a bit more. So I was brought on this new role for Director of Healthcare and Life Sciences to head up pretty much all things related to healthcare and life science research related ventures and startup development. So I've been making my rounds around all of the different affiliated, Harvard Medical affiliated hospitals and research institutions. So again, I'm really pleased to be able to make it here to Mass General. So let me go ahead and just get started here. So I'm going to talk a bit about, Harvard Innovation Lab, and give a background of the programs that we have. I'm going to talk about some of the venture incubation programs, acceleration programs, talk about our Life Lab, the new Life Lab that's going to be built at Harvard Medical School, and then talk about a few other programs that we have, but really so that you'll know how you can become involved and that we are there to support the Harvard community in entrepreneurial and innovation endeavors. I'll talk also a little bit about why start a healthcare startup or life science startup, what they are, and again, also how we're there to support. Talk a little bit about touching on unmet healthcare needs and innovation, how to identify and find unmet healthcare needs, which is the way we go about from a methodology or from a systematic standpoint in terms of developing a venture or a startup. And then getting to this, what I call a go or no-go decision, point at which you develop a value proposition or a value hypothesis. You can go and test that, but then decide if you should continue to pursue. Right? We'll talk a little bit about how that really involves our motto at our innovation labs, which is taking ventures further, faster, like whether that's to succeed or fail. But get to that point of understanding if you should proceed in that time, effort, resources, etc., to continue on with that So who am I? I think Eric did a great job there of introducing me, really provided a lot of background. So I'm a new transplant here from Florida. I just recently moved here in January from the sunny beaches of Florida. Most people ask why when I say that. But I've been there for about 15 years, and it was time for a change. Obviously, with my background being in entrepreneurship and life science, biomedical engineering in particular, Boston was the best possible choice. It's kind of the epicenter of all things. I lived in Melbourne, which is, I was just mentioning, it's kind of the rocket, the Kendall Square of rocket science, as I call it. We're about 15, 20 miles from Kennedy Space Center. You can see the launch pads from our condo, but not so much life science. So now I do live about 6 blocks from Kendall Square. So it's really a big change, but it's just phenomenal. So it really has allowed me to get out and explore what's going on in terms of the forefront of innovation and cutting edge technology, and applying my background and learning from a lot of different people with diverse backgrounds. I think that's what's most exciting. We'll talk a little bit about that, and that's kind of what iLabs or Heart Innovation Labs is there for, is to bring people together with very diverse backgrounds and experiences and expertise. And we are located on the business campus, as I'll talk a bit about. But we are a separate entity from the business school, even though we are under that umbrella in the way that we operate and how we function. So we're there for all of the community here that's affiliated with Harvard and any of the Harvard-affiliated institutions. Talk a little bit about that. So Harvard Innovation Labs. Some of you have maybe seen this logo. How many of you have heard of Harvard Innovation Labs? You've heard of. How do you know what it is or what we do? Okay, that's typically the response, not as many. So I'll talk a little bit about this, and I think it's interesting. I've given a few talks now, and it's always interesting to hear how many people have heard of Harvard Innovation Labs, but never really understood or even been there. I would ask how many people have been there, but I only got 2 hands raised that know what we do, so I assume not that many. Hopefully we're... Oh, there we go. Okay, so to begin with, we have a couple different programs at Harvard Innovation Labs, or as it's, I guess, colloquially kind of referred to as iLabs. We have been in the process of changing the name from iLabs. I'm not going to go into all that. We are referring to ourselves as iLabs plural. A lot of people say iLab, doesn't really matter. A lot of people are now, we're pushing the use of HIL, Hill. You'll see that a lot. But either way, iLabs, Harvard Innovation Labs, all the same thing, right? Just to have that understanding. That's some degree of confusion. So Harvard Innovation Labs, we have a couple different programs that are, I think, of interest to everybody in the Harvard community, and I wanted to touch on these because these are programs that run throughout the year and that anybody in the ecosystem here is able to apply to and pretty much become part of in some way or another, depending on what your affiliation is and what it is that you're working on. So we have 3 main components that make up Harvard Innovation Lab. First is Harvard iLab, right, which is kind of what you have heard of. This is the initial space that was there, the initial infrastructure and entity that defined Harvard Innovation Labs back in 2011 when it was first built. So this is like a co-working space. The building here is shown as we have this big HI sign on the front. You can't miss us. We're right off Western over on the business school campus. So it's a really beautiful co-working space, type of office co-working space that we have. We have a lot of startups working. It's really our innovation dry lab facility, as I guess you would say, or dry lab space. We have a number of ventures working, and also just folks coming in who are interested in innovation and entrepreneurship, students, postdoc researchers, et cetera, who just come by to visit and learn more about innovation and entrepreneurship from a more broad perspective. A lot of times they're folks that just have ideas. They just want to stop by and understand, well, hey, I have this interesting idea, or I think it's interesting. This is a viable idea. Could this be a commercializable idea, right? And they're able to come and meet with us as advisors. They're able to meet with other founders and entrepreneurs, and that's a really big component of what we do, is provide this opportunity for these collisions to occur really increasing that surface area for these collisions to occur, where they can run into folks who have that different experience. Maybe if it is a researcher with some idea, a research fellow who's been working on the technology now for years, but they have really no idea, well, how can I actually take this technology to the clinic, right? Or how could I commercialize this technology and turn it into a successful, profitable venture? And being able to then interact, say, with somebody with a business expertise, maybe who's worked on medical device or a therapeutic or whatever that might actually be in terms of commercialization. We provide those opportunities. We have also a huge program and community and network of mentors and advisors, external specialization experts, entrepreneurs in residence, funders in residence, as we call them, which are investors, typically from the local Boston area, lawyers in residence who are legal counsel here also from the local area that volunteer time. So again, a lot of resources. I think people really are our best resource. We are able to offer pretty much any need from a personnel, from a people interaction standpoint you would need to be able to start to develop and create and grow a successful venture. So Launch Lab X follows kind of Harvard iLabs, and within Harvard iLabs, there's a few other programs that I'll talk about that run throughout the year, but I'll mention quickly Launch Lab X. It's one of them. It's a newer program of ours. This is actually within our iLab space. It's what we call a startup accelerator. So this is kind of for ventures that are established, the startups that have been established, that have some degree of traction. Typically, they have some funding. It's a program that you have to apply to. It's typically open to ventures that have at least one Harvard alumni or Harvard affiliated alumni founder or some other Harvard affiliation to that degree, say as a research fellow. So this program is open as a 9-month program that I'll talk a little bit more about to help really guide the growth of these startups that do have a bit of traction already. And then lastly, or not lastly, but in addition to that, we have what's called the Pagliuca Life Lab. The Life Lab is really interesting. It's a unique space, 15,000 square foot wet lab incubator space for biotech, device, diagnostic type of companies that really need that critical wet lab bench space. We also have a core facility of equipment, cell culture laboratories, etc. I'll talk a bit more about that. A really unique space to be able to provide the infrastructure, the resources to get over that critical early stage gap that many people experience when trying to take a research idea or a technology out of that research lab and translate it to the commercial device. So our venture incubation program is kind of our flagship program. This is the program we've been running for the longest time now. It's based out of Harvard Innovation Labs, our iLabs space, out of the co-working space. We run this 3 times a year. This is open to all Harvard students, all Harvard postdocs, research fellows, residents. We have actually, I'll talk about, we have an amazing venture that was founded by 3 surgical residents for an interesting digitized surgical case log application that they're developing. But we run this 3 times a year. It's a 12-week program that we run each semester, starting each semester, that kind of builds on itself. We use what we call a milestone-driven approach, which is kind of a personalized method that we apply to each one of the ventures, really to ensure that they have at least some way of tracking that progress that they're making, and ensuring that they return every few weeks to meet with us, and we check how those milestones, how well they've done on accomplishing each of these milestones, and really then ensuring that through their co-founders as well, that they have the responsibility to continue their progress as they develop, working with their co-founders and also with us as advisors. So we really provide exclusive access to exclusive resources and programming. That's kind of one of the biggest things that we provide. Is you get access to the space, you have the co-working and office space, you have access to all of the programming content that we offer to the venture incubation program. So we bring in really just top-notch speakers, top-notch specialists to be able to talk to these different venture cohorts on their particular type of startup that they're developing, talk about business development, talk about commercialization, product development, market analysis, customer development, all of these particular types of aspects of building a business, building a successful startup that are really quite relevant. We also will bring in intellectual property attorneys. Actually, next 2 weeks from now, I have the program director from the NIH's SBIR Impact program coming in to talk about SBIR funding, and particularly for his program. So in total, we have 93 ventures right now in our spring cohort for the Venture Incubation Program. This is across all industries. So I oversee healthcare and life sciences. We have 22 healthcare life science ventures. So about a quarter of those ventures are healthcare life science. We have 3 other directors as well that cover other areas of industry, that is B2B enterprise tech, B2C consumer tech, and then also social impact type ventures as well. So we're essentially industry agnostic, or really not that, but open to all different types of industry, and have specialist experts there that are really well versed in these different areas of industry. So in addition to VIP, we have a new program that we started with VIP, the Venture Incubation Program, a new program we started called Connect, which is for people that maybe don't quite have a startup or an entrepreneurial venture put together so as much, maybe just really an idea. So this is a program that we've started to allow people to come in and connect with other potential founders, with other potential experts in a more formalized way. And we offer particular specific programming designed for folks that I think are at that early stage, that have an innovation mindset, or maybe they're trying to develop that innovation mindset and understand how they can take their idea to that next step. And that's really what we offer through this. It's just some specialized programming. Most of these folks that get into that are in this Connect program have applied to the Venture Incubation Program, and they were just too early. So we wanted to offer something that allows for a curation of this group in a little bit more of a programmatic way, to allow us to be able to continue to connect with, and then to connect with us as well as our community over time, so that when they are ready, they can apply to the Venture Incubation Program or our Accelerator or Life Lab, and then really become involved in the community to a higher degree. So this term, at the end of this term, which coincides with the end of our Spring Venture Incubation Program, we have what's called the President's Innovation Challenge. So this is actually put on in part hosted by Harvard Innovation Labs, but also with the President's Office. It's a really great challenge for startups. We do this, it's open to all students, postdocs, anybody that's in the Venture Incubation Program this is open to, but really anybody within the Harvard student, postdoc, research fellow, et cetera community is able to apply for this President's Innovation Challenge. So we break this up into 4 tracks. We have the social impact, health, life sciences, open, which is pretty much everything else, and then we now have a new track for our accelerator program. And we're actually in the process of picking 5 finalists from each one of these industry verticals right now. We have a large cohort of judges working on picking finalists to go on, because we're hosting a pitch event. Everyone is invited. Please come check this out on May 1st. We're hosting a pitch event, which is Pitch to Win. We have $410,000 of prize money up for grabs of essentially early seed funding for these ventures. $75,000 first prize, $25,000 second prize. And then we also have an Ingenuity Award, which is given to typically an earlier stage venture, $10,000 for the most ingenious idea, maybe doesn't quite have the traction. But it's a great challenge to get involved in, great way to meet people, get involved in the community, get involved in the ecosystem, to grow your venture, to really start to develop your idea a bit further, and to get some funding, right? But the exposure and the connections that you're able to make, and the network you're able to build, I think is even more valuable than say the $75,000. But we run this every year, again in tandem with the spring Venture Incubation Program. And again, if you're interested, let me know. Please apply, and if you'd like to attend. May 1st, I have some information here about where and exactly when that takes place for the award ceremony. It's going to be a great event. We put a lot of effort into this flagship event of the year. Our Launch Lab X program, I just mentioned this. This is our accelerator program. How many of you know when I say accelerator, or actually, how about let me back up, incubator? How many of you heard that term, startup incubator? Okay, all right. So I always have to make sure, because these are just kind of like terms that I use. Right? Working in the venture space, we use incubator, right, or accelerator, right? But what are those? So an accelerator versus an incubator is kind of as the name implies, it's very early stage, right? To allow these ventures to incubate, to grow, to kind of form and become something a bit more coherent along this startup or venture spectrum. Accelerator is kind of that next step, right? And I know those terms maybe don't necessarily make sense in how those steps progress, but accelerator typically refers to ventures that are a bit farther along. They have some traction. This is also across all different industries. We have about a quarter of these startups in this program. We have 12 total teams that are all currently alumni-led, so the graduates of various Harvard programs. I think we almost cover all different schools and multiple of the different hospitals and or research institutions within this cohort. This is done as an interest. We have an interesting model for our accelerator program. Many startup accelerators are run kind of on a 3-month, maybe 4-month basis, which really isn't much time, right, to get a venture off the ground and then really to the stage of growth that the idea of the accelerator program is in place for. And so the idea is that we break this 9-month program up into 3 90-day sprints, allowing for growth by focusing on a particular component of the business development that we would like these teams to focus on, but really depending on, say, what our customers or what the founders have an interest in. And so right now we're focused on, we just actually finished our last 90-day sprint, the 3 sprints, focusing on human factor design for all of these different ventures that we do. So we have a theme to each one of these 90-day sprints that we focus on, which are relatively broad, but bringing in experts that are able to really help these teams in these particular areas that we have essentially curated based on the needs of all our customers, or really the founders of these venture teams. Provide dedicated office space. It's an equity-free accelerator, so we don't take any equity, and there's a $100,000 award at the end of the program based on a pitch net. We also provide a ton of exposure to the investment community. We have a really integrated network of venture capitalists, angel investors, other types of investment firms as well. So we have a pitch event here at the end of this program that really allows you to get a lot of exposure to the investment community to raise that round of funding to get to the next level. And then the Pagliuca Life Lab. So this is a really interesting space for those of you, especially that are doing any type of research in a wet lab. We offer this space again as a way to bridge that gap. And I talked a lot about bridging this gap out of the research lab and into the venture world, and be able to create a successful commercialized type of venture, the commercialization effort, right? To take your idea to the real world. And so what we offer is really very high quality lab space and equipment. You can come in, you can rent a lab space for your team at a very reduced or subsidized cost compared to go over here to Kendall Square if you want to rent a space. We offer these spaces at about $2,800 per 6-foot bench. These on these modular 6-foot lab benches. It's all kind of standardized, and then we have several core facilities of equipment, including mammalian cell culture, microbiome. We have all of the molecular bio equipment that you could possibly think of, with the $2 million worth of equipment, and then also, of course, access to many of the affiliated hospital and research institution core equipment facilities as well that are accessed quite often. Currently, we have in this 15,000 square foot space, we have about I think we have 12 resident companies. We have another one that's moving, another one or I think 2 that are moving in. We have this program within this space that's set on a 2-year life cycle, essentially, where you apply, you're able to then move in, and over the course of that 2 years, you're heavily involved in the community. We're providing exposure again also to the funding, investment, business development, technology development, helping you find other co-founders or employees. Many of the companies in here do have actually employees. Uniquely, most of these companies take up maybe 1 to 3 benches, typically these 6-foot benches. We do have actually right here in this overhang space a single suite that's occupied by one company. This company I'll talk a bit more about, Azio Diagnostics, which was born out of our venture incubation program. They have 12 employees now and just raised a significant round of about $9 million in funding. So really able to help these companies go from 1 or 2 people working at a lab bench to grow out to a real company where now they're going to need new space. They're going to have to go out on their own and find their own space, build out their own lab. We'll move into one of the incubator type spaces over here in Kendall Square. And we do also help facilitate that. we're actually operated, from an operational standpoint, day to day, the labs are operated by Lab Central. We actually have a team from Lab Central that actually resides in the space. How many of you have heard of Lab Central? Okay. Yeah, so it's an incubator, wet lab incubator, right across the river here in Kendall Square. It's a great space, about 100,000 square feet. Was formed a nonprofit by folks, Johannes, last name. Anyway, a couple years back, about 5-6 years ago, I believe, as a really kind of new model for venture incubation in a wet lab space. And so they actually run the operations from a day-to-day standpoint in partnership with us. What's also really unique about this space is the way that we have designed the operations and the way that it's structured relative to, say, Harvard University and the business school, is that within the space, the confines of this space, your venture and the technology you develop becomes your technology. It's not IP or intellectual property, safe harbor, as I guess you could call it, right? Where anything you develop, you then own. Now, many of these companies, they do license, of course, technology from Harvard or affiliated research institutions and hospitals. But it really provides an incentive to move into this space and provides you, as a founder, that protection that you'd like to have for your technology without having to worry about licensing agreements, worrying about how you're going to work with some kind of licensing deal out with your tech transfer office, and really just allowing you to focus on the work at hand. And that's kind of the key that what we do is allowing Lab Central to be there to operate on a day-to-day basis. And you don't have to also worry about any of the intellectual property considerations or concerns that you typically would. The founders and the employees that are there are able to focus solely on their work at the bench, and that is what we want them to do in that 2-year time frame. So we just finished our first 2-year cycle, and actually several of our teams are now moving out. We just had 3 teams move out here over the past 6 months. Really is exciting to see these teams raise money and go on to be successful. All the teams that we have had so far graduate from the program have been very successful in raising an additional round of funding. 2 of these teams are actually in the process of building, I believe in Walnut, their own lab together. They've become kind of so tight-knit working with one another as founders. Again, the community is such an important part of what we do that they have gone on. They're building a space, a lab space together for each of their respective companies. So it's really exciting. And then another one of the companies just moved into Lab Central. We can help facilitate that as well to ensure that you have somewhere to move on to next. We have application cycles. Actually, the upcoming application deadline, if any of you, and let me ask now, I should have asked this earlier, how many of you are involved in any type of startup venture or currently? Okay, all right, a couple of you, that's cool. How many of you have interest in potentially being involved in or have an interest in learning more about startup ventures, startups? Okay, great. This is why you're here. So that's what the iLab is there for. We're there to help you learn more, to help explore those ideas, to understand what it means to be what a startup is, what it means to be a founder, what it means to be an innovator in the entrepreneurial space. The Pagliuca Life Lab, we do offer space for those of you that do have existing ventures and you're looking to actually have a wet lab space outside of the research lab, but within more, let's say, controlled confines or comfortable confines that is offered here by Harvard Innovation Labs. So our application deadline is coming up on April 22nd. We'll then have a selection committee meeting where of all those applications, we're going to probably select 2, 3, potentially 4, depending on the space needs of these different ventures. But do check this out. And if you have a venture that you're working on, you have some interest, the cost is greatly reduced. It's about half, maybe even less than half. And the resources that we provide are just, I think, phenomenal, second to none. The community is just great, and the focus that you're able to have on your venture, not having to worry about going out and finding out what type of permitting process, worrying about EH&S or how to hire employees, and not having any kind of these systems in place. We were there to help facilitate all of those different operations. So I wanted to mention this. And I don't want to mention too much about it because we're in the very early stages of planning this, and we just really had our first planning meeting a little over a week ago now. We're building with the Blavatnik. How many of you heard of this donation, this gift that was made? Okay, a $200 million gift by the Blavatnik family, Len Blavatnik, to Harvard Medical School. This gift was for a number of different things, therapeutics initiative, some really high quality equipment, such as cryo-electron microscopes. But part of it has been dedicated for building a new life lab, a wet lab incubator space at Harvard Medical School, which is actually going to build here in the quad. So it's going to be right in the middle of Harvard Medical School. It's going to be unique compared to really anything else. I don't know of anything else that will be like this, where an innovation center, an innovation lab, or incubator space is being plopped right in the middle of an institution like Harvard Medical School, like the top medical school, right? So it really, the potential for this is enormous. Having those kind of interactions of innovators and entrepreneurs right there side by side, literally with physicians at Harvard Medical School and researchers at Harvard Medical School, I think is going to be just amazing. The value that will be able to be created is going to be just phenomenal. There's a proposed date of when this will be operational and open, fall 2020. I don't even want to mention that because I think that may be a bit accelerated, but more power to them. If we can get this done, this will be great. I guess more power to me because I'm on the planning committee for this. So let's see how this goes. I'm really excited for this, though. I think this is good. As we get more information, I really want to keep everyone updated because this is going to be something just incredibly unique to Harvard and to Harvard Medical School. So it's going to provide a significant amount of wet lab and co-working incubation type of space or innovation space, as we would say, for more life science centers to be developed. So there's more space. There's a huge demand that we found. Us being located over at the business school in Alston, there is some distance, and the crow flies about 2 miles, which makes a difference. And it is a challenge to get that far, especially in the middle of the day. So this will really allow those folks that work in medical school to have access just by walking down the hall to this entrepreneurial innovation space. Again, really unique, really exciting. We have a few other really interesting spaces over, interesting facilities over at Harvard Innovation Labs as well that all of the teams and those that come and utilize our space. We have a maker studio for prototyping and manufacturing, a bunch of 3D printers, and we have an electrical workbench, and all the things that you would need to prototype a device and kind of play around and tinker to figure out what the optimum features or feel or look of your device, technology, whatever it might be. It's just a prototype out what your actual device may look like. What's really interesting, we have a company actually that is based on a concept of what we call 3D printer farm. And this is actually a picture of a farm that we have. I think this is 24 3D printers that are all interconnected, such that you can send them your file, your CAD-based type of model file, say in the evening, and come back in the morning and have 24 prototypes, or 24 iterations of your prototype, if you will, right? So you can tweak one aspect, like a handle angle or something like that of your device, and you come back and you have 24 prototypes the next day. And if you've ever gone through the prototyping process, to have 24 prototypes in a day or so, it is an incredible acceleration of the process of prototyping. So really an interesting space, and this is a really interesting venture that we have that's been working on the lab for some time now. We have an AR/VR studio, which is really cool. I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about this. This is some really high-tech, really cool stuff. I'm actually supposed to get some training on this here later next month. But I do know that we have every AR/VR headset that's out there on the market. We've got 3D cameras, 360 cameras, got some really high-end Alienware computer workshops, workstations. We have a couple of ventures that are actually working on this space that are in the healthcare area that are working on both actually that are working on surgical applications of AR. One that's really interesting, I was just working with the co-founder on Friday on some of his business model planning. He's working on deep brain stimulator placement using AR technology for actual interoperative application. Really exciting stuff. So I hope to learn more about this. Again, just additional resources that we have that I think are really phenomenal to be able to have access to as an early stage venture or just an innovator that's interested. So, but getting back to our resources, our best resource, I think, is our people. We just have an incredible community, an incredible network. The advising team that we have is just amazing. Of course, I'm part of it, so maybe I'm biased, but I think that we do a great job. We're really focused on the ventures, on the people, the founders that are these ventures. We focus on team. My belief, my true belief is that in terms of a successful venture, whatever that might be, startup, project, research, whatever that may be, team is really the most important part, the composition of that team, the chemistry of that team, and that's really what our focus is on, is creating a great team. And we just have, I think, a phenomenal team internally, but also externally. We have access to a lot of just phenomenal mentors from industry, from pharmaceutical, medical device industry, biotech. We have, like I mentioned, funders in residence, entrepreneurs in residence, lawyers in residence, all offering their particular expertise. I think one of the greatest things that we have access to is just this community of founders that have been through this process of starting a startup, of developing a venture, going through the pains, getting over the hurdles of actually developing startup and becoming successful. But most importantly, having gone through the failures, right? The failure is the part of founding a venture, right, where you really learn the most. And they come in, these mentors and these entrepreneurs and residents come in and they share their stories about failure. These are oftentimes very successful people in their respective spaces, right? Many of our founders know who these folks are, but to hear them as, kind of in the flesh and blood talking about some of the challenges that they had to go through, how, in many instances, they just almost didn't make it to become the success stories that they now are, is really, I think, about the best learning experience that we can offer. And that's what we're there for. We're to educate, right? We're there to provide this experiential learning, and I think it comes from the people. We also have specialist office hours where we have, again, attorneys from top law firms coming in to offer assistance with intellectual property, portfolio design and strategy, with say FDA regulatory strategy, business development aspects like commercialization and productization. So really anything you can think of, we typically offer some type of specialist, or probably a number of specialists that come in. We have mentors that we assign and match with each of the teams, founders or executives from the corporate world who have been through this process, typically multiple times, who work with one particular venture team of founders, and we help guide them over the course of a semester or two through their growth while they're at the Innovation Labs, particularly in our venture incubation program, or in our Life Lab, or Launch Lab accelerator programs. We have a lot of access to investors, which of course money is important. It's not the focus necessarily solely of what we are there to do, but obviously you need money, you need funding to grow a venture. You have to have it, right? So we do have an amazing network of investors from Harvard Business School, typically alumni from the local Boston ecosystem, of investors and venture capitalists, and then also just from throughout the country. We have a really quite a large following and network of investors. Actually, right now we're running an online demo day, what's called Founders Net, which provides a platform for virtual pitches. Startup connection, get up, pitch. It's done through a video platform. We have about 140 investors right now on the platform, and about 25 or 26 ventures that over the past week have resulted in over 100 introductions in total among all of those ventures and investors, which is just phenomenal. I mean, that's a huge amount of surface area to cover in providing these interactions that typically are really challenging. What we're trying to do is just reduce that friction, reduce those challenges, and really reduce the time that these founders have to spend raising money. If you've ever had to go on and raise money, going out to raise money is really challenging, extraordinarily time-consuming. And if you're running a business, well, then that detracts from your day-to-day operation of running that business, growing that business, right? So we really do try to reduce that burden on our founders by making these connections and facilitating these connections much easier processes. We have obviously affiliations with all hospitals and research institutions. Our alumni community is enormous, and also, of course, the broader Boston ecosystem that we're able to work with, such as over here in Kimball Square and all the surrounding areas, the corporations, startups that have oftentimes been born out of Harvard Innovation Labs or Harvard community. We work quite a bit with those alumni, with those founders as well. They're all really interested typically in giving back and coming to provide help, and it's all based on a voluntary basis. So I mean, it's a really awesome community, something I could not be happier to be part of. So kind of now to our mission and what we believe, what we value ourselves. Well, we see knowledge as the engine of innovation. We are a place of learning. We're there for experiential learning, to provide real world type of experiences for learning. But collaboration, we say, is the gasoline. And this goes back to people, the community. Bringing together people from diverse backgrounds. And I'll show a statistic here that we have folks from every one of the different schools. And I don't know if the statistics actually show, but I think also every one of the affiliated hospitals as well, which is really amazing. So we're bringing together people of the right mix, right, or of a huge variety across the whole spectrum of what their backgrounds and experiences are, right? And through that, we see some really amazing things happen. I'll show some stats on the impact of what this has created. So we're a guide, a motivator, a collaborator, mostly just a connector. We are there to connect people and put people in the position to be able to meet the right people, be involved in that network, become part of that community, become part of that family. That is Harvard iLab, right? That is the Innovation Lab's way, right? So we're there to connect people, to provide knowledge and insights and resources, and really our motto is to take ventures further faster, right? And as I started out with, what we mean by that is, of course, well, we want you to succeed, we want you to go further, and we want to facilitate you going further and do it as fast as you possibly can. But if you're going to fail, if your idea just is not right and you need to go back and iterate, or it's just not a great idea, we want you to get there as quickly as possible as well, right? We don't want you to be spending the time, the effort, and the resources on an idea that just is not right. And that's the idea of further faster, right? So, and we don't see failure as a bad thing. We actually see failure as a great thing, because again, it's the opportunity to really learn the most. Failures that I've had as an entrepreneur and being involved in startups, being a founder, are by far, I've learned way more by the failures than I would ever have learned from any successes. And I've had far more failures too as well. And I think what's important is, particularly when I talk with researchers and research fellows, talking about failure and the connection that has to being an entrepreneur. But as a researcher, if you did your PhD, right, or if you were a research fellow or a postdoc, or you work in a research lab now as a faculty member, you understand failure really well, right? That's most of the time is spent failing and learning from those failures, right? And that's really the idea of research. You set up a hypothesis, you test that hypothesis. When it fails, right, you go back and try to understand why, and then you adjust, right? And that's really gets to the heart of the idea of being a successful entrepreneur is understanding that failure provides quite a bit of insight, more so than success, and learning from those failures to then guide you to that point of success is really quite key. Our vision is to become a global de facto leader of university-based innovation and entrepreneurship. And we're just looking to change the world, right? We're looking to truly change the world and provide opportunities to the best and the brightest minds, the most motivated folks, to come in, explore their ideas, and learn how to grow these ideas and innovate and change the world for better. So some impact that we've had so far, just by the numbers looking at this, over 1,100 venture teams that we've incubated. Right now we have about 150, I think it's actually a little bit more than 150 teams right now from all 12 schools. And then also, as I mentioned, and I don't think that I put the stats up here, but also from, I believe, every hospital or almost every single hospital affiliated with Harvard. I would say pretty close. But really the lifelong learning and the deep connections that we've built, these are hard to quantify types of metrics, right? But we really pride ourselves on the connections that we build and the interactions that we allow for, just phenomenal. So I wanted to show this. I think this is interesting. I took this from a colleague of mine's presentation. But it breaks down the representation of the different schools. I'm going to have to see if we can get the numbers for also the representation of the different hospitals as well. I think that would be a great statistic to look at. Because the people, again, that I get to interact with on a daily basis that are part of these ventures, that are founders, they just come from all of these different institutions and just phenomenal backgrounds. Their stories are just great. And being able to put them in touch with other folks from the different schools and different hospitals really creates some just magical things. So you can see that in terms of the venture categories, we can break these up in 4 categories. You see healthcare, life sciences constitutes about a quarter of the ventures that we have. And also, interestingly, about 54% of our ventures have a female co-founder, which, if you've been in the venture space, is a very high number. And I think it's something that we pride ourselves in. In terms of the diversity of the founders that we have, it's really quite phenomenal. Something that I'm actually really interested in and working with some of the Women in Biotech program and the other related programs that are here locally in Boston, really working on putting on an event for women entrepreneurs. I think this is quite relevant, being March, Women History Month. So we're really excited to be able to have a 54% female founder venture metric. In terms of money raised, just in terms of money that's been raised by ventures while they're in our program, over $100 million has been raised while these teams have been incubated in our program. And then in total, money that's been raised, this is as of 2018, last year, this is not an up-to-date number yet, and there's been some teams that have raised pretty significant seed and Series A rounds just here in the past couple months. Over $1.3 billion in funding raised by these companies so far. So I think it speaks to the success of what we're doing. It speaks to the methodology. It speaks to what we're trying to do as a community and ecosystem, and really kind of being that center point to help these ventures grow, to help these founders come in and grow themselves as people and as entrepreneurs, as innovators, right? So it does, I think, speak to the impact that we've had, and again, something that we can be really proud of. And welcoming all of you to please come be a part and take part in what we offer at Organization Labs. So we have some upcoming events. Wanted to just kind of touch on a few of these. As I mentioned, we have regular programming of speakers, panels, fireside chats. The newsletter is available online. You can sign up for that through this link. I'm happy to pass these slides out if you'd like. May 1st, I didn't put where this is located, but May 1st at, I believe it's 5:30, starting at 5:30, we have the 2019 President's Innovation Challenge Award, which is the awarding of the $410,000 pot of money. Please, everyone come out. We expect around about 1,000 people, so it'll be a great event. The top finalists from each of the verticals are actually going to give their pitch, and then the awards will be given out, first and second prize. So really going to be an exciting event. May 2nd, deadline for the summer VIP application, which is the Venture Incubation Program. So if you're interested, check it out. Come check out the Venture Incubation Program. We'd love to have your application. And then we have our Launch Lab X, which is our accelerator program. On May 25th, we have a demo day, which is another pitch event that we host. We host a lot of events. That's something that we do. We have events probably almost every other day. We have some type of event for some program that we have, whether it's for the entire Harvard community or more specifically for one of the stages or industry verticals of ventures that we have. But we really do put on some amazing events, bringing in really top-notch speakers that are really relevant to those in our community and in different ecosystems that we work. So check us out if you're interested. I think we again have some great things going on that everybody would have some interest in one way. So I wanted to just briefly, here in the last 9-10 minutes that I have, I wanted to talk about a few of the ventures and just mention a few of these startups that we have currently working in iLabs, just to give an idea of kind of the spread of what they're working on and where they came from, and a little bit of the story. I would love to have had a couple of founders even just come talk. We had a group of healthcare executives come by the iLabs last week, and about 50 or 60 healthcare executives on this tour from what's called the Chief Innovation Officer Summit run by Healthcare Management Academy. And they just seem to be so impressed by these teams. So one of these teams is really interesting. I kind of mentioned them, I think, earlier. They're called NOT, A-O-N-T, right? So this is actually founded by 3 surgical residents that are from, one's from Boston Children's Hospital, one from Brigham, another one over at Harvard Medical School. So this is really an interesting company. Kyle, Heather, and Robert being the founders of this company and the surgical residents that I talked about. Kyle is actually a neurosurgical resident. Heather and Robert are general surgery. So this is based on a problem that they experience every single day. And these are the types of ventures that I think are really so exciting to see. is that they had this pain point, they had this challenge that they were facing every day as residents as they were training in their surgical training programs, which is surgical case logs. How many of you are familiar with surgical case logs? Yeah. Okay. So I am not a surgeon, right? I actually did work in surgery as a technician for a while, so I do have some idea of just kind of how crazy and chaotic it can be, and in the schedule of a surgeon, right? And as they explained to me, as a surgeon in training, you have to log all of your cases. You have to keep track of how many types of cases, and really there's also a lot of knowledge transfer that occurs in these surgical case logs as well. And they explained to me, I guess, that kind of back in the day, surgeons really were kind of artists, right? And they draw out diagrams and anatomy, right, to help explain and learn these different surgical procedures. And it was really interesting to hear about how surgery, a lot of what's taught and learned is really from experiential learning, right? It's really from this kind of word of mouth as you're there in the moment, interacting, learning how to tie, say knots in a suture, for instance, right? And these processes of these different procedures and how they're performed, and that there really isn't any digitized way that this is tracked, particularly for how the tracking is done for to become a surgeon and practice on your own, become accredited, but also all of the knowledge, and having this knowledge as a database that can be shared, right? And so this is something that they had a real challenge with, and also the fact that the burden on them in between each case to go and log all of this information in the current computer interface that they had to use, which they explained was extremely burdensome, and they believe leads to a lot of burnout, particularly among residents, which are already very busy people. So their idea was to go out and they really talked to a lot of their fellow colleagues to find out the pain points that they were experiencing, to design this surgical case log, digitized surgical case log app that allows for all of this information to be stored for accreditation, but also importantly for it to be shared with their fellow colleagues as a learning tool, right? So they actually started this company here. They're actually in a fellowship program right now, they're each in respective fellowship surgical programs at their hospitals. They founded this company only about 4 months ago, and what's interesting is in that time they've already won a venture incubation, a pitch competition, which was not associated with iLabs, and so they've raised some money. They're in the process of incorporating now, and so they've really, I think they can attest to just being again involved in the community that Harvard Innovation Labs is what we've been able to help provide and be able to offer in terms of resources from a network, and also providing space to work out of as a common place to come and work and meet with other founders and meet with investors. We've really had a lot of interest, and they have been able to make some tremendous progress in the time that they've been operational. So really exciting. Again, solving for a pain point that they experience every day. I think this gets to the root of what it is, what it means to be. It's just a phenomenal story. We have another team. They also are relatively new and have just made incredible progress in the time, called Mind Mics. So this is an interesting technology. The intellectual property is actually held on the sensors. These are wearable. There's a wearable technology. They're actually headphones, typically like if you think of earbuds, like you might think of, but they can actually measure EKG from your ear, right, with a very high degree of sensitivity, and as well as potentially some other biometric measures as well. The technology behind this is really quite phenomenal. Their founder, actually, she's a double PhD in astrophysics and applied mathematics or something like that. But brilliant. Anna is just incredible. She's a founding CEO, never been a founder before. Founded this company, I think, back in September as part of the venture incubation program at iLabs. And they now are raising, just raised a substantial amount of seed funding and are working on progressing to a second round of funding. They have an incredible team of advisors that are working on developing this device, on this hardware, but also the back-end technology, which is data analytics and application of artificial intelligence. Just phenomenal where they have gotten in 6 months. So again, I think this is another great example of what can be done. She's bringing on hiring, I think her third or fourth data scientist, has a team composed of some Harvard graduate students as well. So just, again, another great story. We have another team that's actually, these are based out of our Launch Lab Accelerator called Nebula Genomics. They actually were founded at a church lab. They're using blockchain to be able to reduce the cost of personal genome sequencing, but also to enhance the data security and data protection of genomic data. So out of the church lab, really exciting companies that we have coming out of the church lab. We have 3 or 4 companies right now from George Church's lab that are just all doing some amazing work. Actually, we have teams in each one of our respective programs, the Venture Incubation Program, the Life Lab, the Accelerator from George Church's lab. So really exciting stuff. And then another company I wanted to mention, because they're kind of the prototype of what we like to see, day zero diagnostics. They're currently in our Life Lab. Their company is based on predicting antibiotic resistance using whole genome sequencing for faster diagnostic of bacterial infections, right? Quite relevant, of course, for hospital and hospital-acquired infections. So it's one of the areas to focus on. But the founders is really, they have a team of founders that are really incredible. They actually began this venture out of the Venture Incubation Program, I think 2 years ago, or was it even 2 whole years ago? I'm not sure. They were in our Venture Incubation Program, started out as just an idea out of their labs, some research that they were working on together as researchers in their respective labs as graduate students and postdocs. And they actually spun this out to a company, and they're now in the Life. They've been in the Life Lab for 2 years now, and they actually occupy the suite in our Life Lab, the one suite that we do have. And they have 12 employees. They just raised a $9 million round. In the course of the time since they've been at Harvard Innovation Labs, they've raised over $12 million. Again, hiring 12 or maybe 13 employees. Just a really, again, incredible story. The founder, Miriam, was just featured in Forbes in a great article talking about her venture and the importance of the iLab and the community and the ecosystem that we are able to provide. So, again, just a phenomenal story, one that I always like to talk about, that I think is so exciting, really what we're there to do and provide. So with that, I guess we're right on time. Right? That's impressive for me. So I was going to talk a little bit more about unmet needs and bridging the gap, but maybe we'll save that for another talk. Talk more about that. Looking for unmet healthcare needs and kind of the methodology that I'm working on developing further for entrepreneurial ventures in the healthcare and life sciences space, and really to work with healthcare experts and healthcare practitioners to understand their pain points and be able to find solutions that really meet these problems. Using some of the technologies that we now have available to us. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over. If there's any questions, we have time for a few questions.
Well, maybe given the time, if people have questions, they can just come down and chat. Michael has some time to stick around. What we'll do is we'll send out his contact information and some of the websites and newsletter logins and things to people so you can follow up on what you heard today and try to connect in any way you like with Harvard iLabs. But we certainly encourage people with ideas to connect with Michael and try to figure out how you can bring those ideas to iLabs to start the collaboration going. So Michael, thank you very much for being here today. Anybody who'd like to come on